Hello everyone, welcome to a different kind of video. I know you guys are saying, Theo, you're not talking about DSP. You're right, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about this video called Why is Modern Art So Bad? Because this video, and this channel by the way, this channel is also a piece of shit, but this video is something. And, you know, it's gonna be a very rich in discussion kind of video, so I hope you guys enjoy it. But let's get into it.
The Mona Lisa, the Pietà, the girl with a pearl earring. For a score of centuries, artists enriched Western society with their works of astonishing beauty. The Night Watch, the Thinker, the Rocky Mountains. Master after master, from Leonardo to Rembrandt to Bierstadt, produced works that inspired, uplifted, and deepened us. And they did this by demanding of themselves the highest standards of excellence, improving upon the work of each previous generation of masters, and continuing to aspire to the highest quality attainable.
Now, I want to kind of keep in mind the improving upon the work of previous masters, because when a lot of artists came out during the generations, the previous masters would look at this new art and be like, oh, this is garbage, this isn't nowhere near as good as mine, as the work that we have done and the work before that. It's this kind of, I think it's called the golden age syndrome, I really don't remember it, where you think that the previous generation was better than the current. And that's kind of tainting this video and this guy's opinion, because a lot of art is more subjective, and it's also more abstract. That's why we have such a lengthy discussion about what is art. It's kind of like having it's like having a discussion about, in the animation industry, where which is anime, which isn't anime. I mean, you can always have fundamental differences. I think there is a fundamental difference between anime and Western cartoons, but I think it's still a spectrum of a scale that you're just trying to kind of set aside. I mean, it's a very lengthy debate, and it's been a debate that's been in the animation industry, or community, I should say, for a long time. It's been a topic ever since anime became, prevalent in our culture.
But something happened on the way to the 20th century.
Now, the other thing I want to say is, aspiring to the highest quality attainable. The reason why a lot of these paintings back, during that time, was around the time where people had no cameras. They relied on artists to capture the moment. They had to paint the pictures of a family portrait, all this kind of stuff. So a lot of these artists had to paint in a realistic way. Now, he's going to argue that art is not about that anymore, which is not true as well. But we'll get there when we get there.
The profound, the inspiring, and the beautiful were replaced.
Now, here's the other thing. Profound, inspiring, beautiful. All of this stuff is still prevalent. You can still find art that's inspiring. I found art that's inspiring. The Persona 5 art book is inspiring. Yoji Shinkawa's inspiring. There's all kinds of art. The issue with modern art is that it's very hard for modern artists to kind of make a name for themselves, or to make a landmark for themselves, because it's a very harsh industry to kind of make a living or to come up on. You can't really just become an artist and bam, you're the next Van Gogh. You really can't do that. So it's very easy that these artists are getting hidden between the mix, between the people that are getting more popular or getting the most attention. It's very hard to find a lot of contemporary artists. It's a very, very difficult thing to kind of put your finger on.
By the new, the different, and the ugly.
Now, he's also trying to make the argument of saying that, oh, well, now art is about new and different and ugly things. That's not necessarily the case either. Every painting, for starters, is new. So that's kind of dumb to put new in a negative term, because every time you create something, it's new. Now, he might be saying, well, with new ideas, and it's a new direction, but that's still what art is. Art has been taking multiple directions. It's never been about going back or reverting to something old. It's always been moving the medium forward. The medium constantly changes with the times and with other people's, styles and ideas. You're always gonna get new. So him saying, "Oh, now we get new stuff," that's dumb. Then he shits on things being different. Everything is different. Look at even at the art before the 20th century. To a degree, that art has been different. There's chiaroscuro, which is a different art style, has more harsher contrast with shading. There's sculpture. Sculptures are different from paintings. There's all this kind of art that happens in the past that is different from each other. There's the I think it's Rococo, whatever. It's this weird style that every time I talk to another artist, they always hate that style. I was in an art history class, and everyone hates that period of time with art. It's like this is awful, and no one enjoys it. So there's that. There's the High Renaissance. There's the pop culture. There's all these kind of actually, you might have to step back with the pop culture one for a moment because I don't remember necessarily. It's been a while since I took art history, so cut me a fucking break, guys. But either way, art has always been different, always. Look at Picasso to Van Gogh. Look at Jackson Pollock. Look at Andy Warhol. Even though I really don't like Andy Warhol, but art has always been different. Every artist has a different perspective or style. It's never been the same. So new and different is just dumb shit to argue about and to complain about. Ugly is also very subjective. You can find an art piece that's ugly, but then someone else is gonna like it. Okay.
Today, the silly, the pointless, and the purely offensive are held up as the best of modern art.
Silly, pointless, and purely offensive. These three things, it's kind of ironic coming from PragerU when they say that people need to be more offensive and all this stuff, but whatever. Okay. But that aside, art in of itself has always been offensive. When there's been paintings in the past, like there was one, look at, there was one about a urinal. I can't remember the name of the artist, but that was very controversial for its time. Now when we look back at it, or whatever, it's like, who fucking cares? It's good for what it was, and so on. Art has been many things. Art can be many things. It can be silly sometimes. Art can be anything. It can be silly, it can be pointless, and it can be purely offensive. But it can also be serious, thoughtful, and uplifting. That kind of stuff hasn't gone away. It's just that these silly, pointless, and purely offensive things have made more of a landmark in our culture because it's more surprising. It's always been surprising to see something that's like such a big, outrageous, piece to be, at the museum. People love this kind of controversial or provocative pieces, but that's not really replacing or removing the quality of art either. It's just that art has been so diversified and has been so open that art can be almost anything, but at the same time, you can't just mindlessly walk into a museum and say, "This is art, guys, look, this is art," and then you'll suddenly get $1 million. That's not how it works either. Because you can give a chimpanzee a brush, or just a baby with a brush, and they can paint something. That's not necessarily gonna mean that baby's gonna suddenly become the next, fucking Yoji Shinkawa, or Ashley Wood, or Picasso, or a Monet, or anything like that. There is a level of craft, and it does show in the work and level of thought. It has layers and all this other kind of stuff. So simplifying it to silly, pointless, and purely offensive is kind of painting modern art in a box that you think it's in, when modern art can be anything. There's such a widespread acceptance of what it is that there's a debate about it. Animation is art. Movies are art. almost anything can be art, but it's just that you can't just, as I said, you can't just waltz in and suddenly say something is art when it has no skill or craft behind it.
Michelangelo carved his David out of a rock. The Los Angeles County Museum of Art just offers us a rock. A rock. All 340 tons of it.
But what's the context of the rock, though? Like, there could be something about the rock that is, or maybe it's just admiring the natural beauty of what the earth has created. There's a lot of perspectives you could look at it, but it's also the intent of the artist, because with the movement with Andy Warhol and this discussion of what is art, what is kind of coming into play with these thoughts is that we're taking things you would not necessarily think of being art and saying, well, what if we look at this in an artistic way? But it's that, it's also the intent, and it's also just kind of the upkeep of what it is. I mean, you can disagree, you could criticize it saying this isn't art to me, and that's fine. You're valid into your own perception of what is art and what isn't art. And that's kind of I would have admired or appreciated this video a little bit more if it approached it in that lens, but it doesn't. It kind of goes in and saying, this is what art is, this isn't what art is, and that's a fact, and you can't really do that with art as much anymore. It's a very subjective thing, and it is something that is, very, very, thought-provoking and has a very hefty discussion. You can't just decide what is art and saying, that's it,
That's how far standards have fallen. How did this happen?
But even then, just because we have a rock saying that's art doesn't mean that our standards are lower. That doesn't mean that we're not holding artists to a higher expectation. And it's kind of the same criticism I've been hearing with the CalArts style with TV shows and animated shows. However, the thing is that the reason why I disagree with the CalArts style discussion is I do understand why that name has caught on and why it stuck. But the reason why I disagree with it is if you take any lesson in art, they're not going to teach you a single style and say this is what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, this style. They teach you the principles of art, quality, detail, fluidity within animation, all this other kind of stuff. They teach you all of these things. They don't teach you to draw in a particular style. The reason why we see the style used in Steven Universe, Thundercats Roar, High Guardian Spice, and so on, is because networks want this style that's recognizable, and they're finding these, and they're kind of coaching or melding these shows into that style, because a lot of the time, a network sees a show like Steven Universe and says, you know what, that show made a lot of money and has a lot of attention. We want a show that can get the same kind of attention. Alright, we need a show that is goofy, and we need a show that has a similar style to that, so people can think, oh, this show looks just like Steven Universe, and I'm going to watch this because it looks just like it. And that's kind of what it is. It's a fad. It's not, you don't go to CalArts and they're not going to teach you that style. They're going to teach you how to animate, and they're going to teach you how to, the principles of it. They're not going to teach you, oh right, see, Steven Universe animated like this, so we're going to teach you this style, and that's all we're going to teach you. Because that's not how it works. I took a class in caricatures, and one of the things that professor kept stressing is, if you're going to do caricatures, you have to understand the anatomy of the human skull. You have to understand the proportions before you can start messing with the proportions. Because, if you understand the proportion of the face and how it looks, you'll understand how to manipulate it to make it look natural and fun, and kind of the way that a caricature looks. You can't just go right in to a caricature without understanding the core concept of the human anatomy. And that is what they teach you. They're not going to teach you just how to draw a caricature. They're going to teach you how to draw the human skull, how to draw perspective, proportions, and then they're going to start, messing with the scale and how you draw it. It's not just one thing they're going to teach you. That's not how art works, and it's not that simple. there's a lot of gears in play when you do something like that. Like, you can't just learn how to animate like Steven Universe when you're starting to animate. You have to learn how to do weight, how to do consistency, how to do all kinds of stuff that is very difficult and tricky with animation. You can't just learn one style and just go with it. That's kind of why I disagree with the CalArts style, and that's kind of why I don't agree with what he's saying about how our standards of art has fallen when we have standards in art. It's just that, once you leave art school and when you start doing your own style and you start to adapt things, that's when we start to see a little bit more of this kind of gray area being played around with. Because we are using what they learned in school, and then they're going to start applying it to more, controversial directions. It's more of that. That rock might not be, intrinsically artistic in the sense of that guy might not have created it, but he came up with the idea of, well, what if I take this rock, perform it like it's an art piece, and see the reception. That in of itself can be art because you're offering something to the public. People are digesting what you're offering. Now, it is up to you to decide, is this art, is it not art? But it's not a simple thing that everyone has to agree with. Art is such a gray area of a discussion that art can be anything, as I said, but you do need a level of craft in it. You can't just waltz into a gallery, give them nonsense, and then, walk out with $1 million. That's not necessarily how it's going to work. You're going to have to follow through with, why is the thing you're proposing art? Why should we look at this in this kind of lens? What is the statement here? It's a very, very tricky thing to come across, and this guy is just simplifying it and just it's kind of like an old man yelling at the newer generation. It's like someone who learned the typewriter getting angry that we have computers. Like, oh, I had to learn how to type on a typewriter, now we have fucking computers. It's...
How did the 1,000-year ascent towards artistic perfection and excellence die out? It didn't. It was pushed out.
Yeah, it was pushed out. Oh. That's what it is. All these young whippersnappers coming in, they pushed out the fucking detail in art. I mean, I went to school, I went to college. I had some friends that did some artwork, and a lot of their art was a lot better than mine. Yeah, very nice detail within the painting, and a lot of times I was jealous of their craft than where I was. But clearly, I pushed them out. I said, "Hey, you know what? Fuck you. Look at my art. I'm better than you because why not? Fuck you." Clearly, that's what happened. Okay.
Beginning in the late 19th century, a group dubbed the Impressionists rebelled against the French Académie des Beaux-Arts and its demand for classical standards. Whatever their intentions, the new modernists sowed the seeds of aesthetic relativism, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder mentality. Today, everybody loves the Impressionists. And as with most revolutions,
But again, like, these Impressionists did not remove or devalue other art forms. It's just a style. You could look at Impressionism and be like, oh, I really like their artwork. I wanna kind of, be part of this kind of thought-provoking group, or you could just sit there and be like, no, I like doing these classic kind of artwork that has very high quality and detail, and I just want to kind of do more of that. I want to push that and make pieces that are just kind of awe-inspiring. Again, he thinks that these Impressionists came in and removed other forms of art, which isn't true. But okay.
First generation or so produced work of genuine merit. Monet, Renoir, and Degas still maintained elements of disciplined design and execution. But with each new generation, standards declined until there were no standards.
Now look at this graph. What is this graph? What are the numbers? What's the values? Yeah, I get the timeline, like, oh yeah, the standards have gone down, but at what increment? And this is a stupid graph to begin with. As adequately I put it, stupid. But look how dumb this graph is. It goes sharply down. So if you're in 2015 or 2018 and you make artwork that has such high standards of quality, but it has, realism in it, it has, this such aesthetically pleasing kind of craft, clearly you're ignored, right? Okay, you're just ignored in this graph because clearly the Impressionists are here to stay forever and ever. Okay. Alright.
All that was left was personal expression. The great art historian
Personal expression. Because you can't get art out of your own personal expression. There is art within your expression. Art has been an expression for years. Except when we didn't have cameras and art was used to be as a camera, pretty much. Art has always been personal expression. The ancient Greeks, when they did all of these statues, that was personal expression of a celebration of the human physique. The muscles made no sense if you look at them. They were flexed when it was impossible to flex a muscle in that pose that those statues were in. A lot of that stuff was sexualized, idealized, and just made in a personal way to look a certain way. Personal expression has been with art for years. Just to ignore that's like, well, personal expression started to come in between the 1950s and the 2000s. That's when the art was reduced to personal expression. You're ignoring the years where art was used to celebrate certain things in a personal way. A lot of it was personal expression to begin with. But okay. Alright, buddy.
Rosenberg wrote that quality in art is not merely a matter of personal opinion, but to a high degree objectively traceable. But the idea of a universal standard of quality in art is now usually met with strong resistance, if not open ridicule.
Nowhere have I seen anyone ridiculed a standard of quality. Because I make shitty art sometimes, okay? When I was in college, I made crappy art. And my art professor would take our pieces, put them out in the hallway in our building, and he would have us rank our work with other classmates. And he would say, okay, put this stuff on the left that is the best, and then on the right the worst. And mine would usually average to be in the middle or in the worst end. Now, did I sit there and be like, how dare you say there's equality? Okay, my work is the best because I put my heart in it, dude. There was always a universal standard of quality. There's always been quality. It has been measured with how many people seek out art commissions. Some people don't like my art, and I understand that, and that's why, it might be harder for me to find a commission. That's fine. I'm not sitting here saying, how dare you not give me money to do art for you, because, we're getting rid of the universal standard of quality. Didn't you hear? We got rid of it. That standard has gone nowhere. It has always been ingrained in our society, regardless. When you propose an idea for modern art, like that rock that he used as an example, they're not going to just sit there and accept the rock. You have to have some artistic reasoning behind that rock that can be perceived in a way. If the person doesn't see it as art, that rock would not be in that museum, clearly. But there is a standard of quality. It's just that it's not as strict or as ludicrous as this guy thinks it is. There is a standard of quality. If you make shitty art, you're going to be rated shitty. It has gone nowhere. There's always been a quality in it. It's kind of frustrating to see people even carry over back to the animation industry that's saying, well, see, we have this animation style that's propagating TV. Clearly there is no quality in animation in the Western society. There's no quality Western animations. When there is, it's just that the reason why these simplistic animation styles that we've been seeing are starting to propagate more is because they're cheaper to make. And networks like cheap things. But that doesn't mean that there's no Western animation that looks nice. Like Wes Anderson's movies. Isle of Dogs is a stop-motion animated film. Anomalisa is Western animated stop-motion film. Pixar films are nicely animated films. We still have nice animated films coming from the West. It's just that we focus on these other shows that have a simplistic style. But even then, I would argue that even let's say we look at the Steven Universe style, this CalArts style, that is still a aesthetically pleasing style. It's just a played out, drawn out, tired style. We're tired of it. But if you compare it to shows like Brickleberry, and there's another show that I can't remember, that look atrociously bad, I would much rather watch Steven Universe than Brickleberry. Brickleberry has aesthetically disgusting character models that don't look nice to the eye. They look stiff, they look lanky, they look awful. But if you look at a show like Steven Universe, Thundercats Roar, or even High Garden Space, I can at least see that there has been some effort put into it to make it look the way it does. You could say that you could get tired of that art style. I'm not saying that art style is amazing and new and fresh. It's not fresh, but I at least appreciate that style more than a show like Brickleberry. Brickleberry is just I never liked how that show looked. Same with Family Guy. Family Guy is not an aesthetically pleasing show either. The Simpsons has at least a style to it. It has a very distinct style with that show. Same with King of the Hill. But Seth MacFarlane's shows have a very, very stiff character models that just don't look nice. But obviously it looked nice to someone to make that show as popular as it is. I mean, there is a standard of quality if you like it or not. It's just that everyone has their own threshold of quality of what they see as quality. See, I might say, oh, shows like Thundercats Roar and High Garden Spice, the quality of art in those shows is nice. It's good. I like the style, but but I can still have the opinion that it's a tired style. But I can still say it's nice. I still see some artistic value in it. So when else gonna tell me, Theo, I disagree. I don't think that show has any standard in it or any quality in it, and that's also valid. There is no backlash to universal standard of quality. It's just that everyone has a different standard, and it varies to person to person. But okay.
How can art be objective?
I mean, think about it. I had a painting professor and a drawing professor. The drawing professor loved my drawings. She loved them. But my painting professor did not really care for my paintings. He was like, your paintings are not terrible, but they're just not that good. They need to be pushed a little bit more. You need to really spend more time on it. And and I understand that. I understand that there is this wiggle room with art. But does that mean that my drawing professor is more right than my painting professor, or vice versa? Not necessarily. It's not a simple discussion like that.
Measured, I'm challenged. In responding, I simply point to the artistic results produced by universal standards compared to what is produced by relativism. The former gave the world the birth of Venus and the dying Gaul, while the latter has given us the Holy Virgin Mary, fashioned with cow dung and pornographic images, and Petra, the prize-winning sculpture of a policewoman squatting and urinating, complete with a puddle of synthetic urine. Compared to what is produced by relativism. The former gave the world the birth of Venus and the dying Gaul, while...
So, those are well sculpted and well painted pieces. Okay, it's very thought-provoking. It has a lot of... But the tempera kind of has more of a religious aspect to it. It did go into a little bit more of a surrealism with that.
Well, the latter has given us the Holy Virgin...
The Holy Virgin Mary. I mean, it's clear that the statement is just that. I've never seen that painting, so I don't really have an opinion on it, to be honest. So I can't really say anything about that.
Fashioned with cow dung and pornographic images.
But it's very clear that seeing that the materials used, oil, glitter, resin, oil, by the way, is also done with the tempera on canvas. I thought that was oil painting. Well, whatever. Most paintings are done by oil painting, so Glitter is glitter. Resin, cow dung, pornographic images. Pornographic images. Pornographic images. This is funny. Tempera as a naked woman. There's a lot of pornographic imagery from old art. Look at the Renaissance paintings. Filled with naked women. Filled with pornographic imagery. Pornographic imagery has been in art for a long time. You can't really say that there are no pornographic imagery. Just saying.
And Petra.
But Petra, that's a sculpture, though. I mean, come on.
The prize-winning sculpture of a policewoman
But
squatting
look how realistic that sculpture looks. Oh.
and urinating.
I mean, look how realistic that looks. Oh, I'm blocking it, aren't I? Yeah, I'm blocking it. Nope. Look at it. The sculpture looks realistic. Wouldn't that fit his quality? To his standards? Because it has a very nice material being used. Oh, it's just that the subject matter is disgusting. But at the same time, it's a very realistic subject matter. Because police women have to go to the bathroom too? But okay. Okay.
Urinating, complete with a puddle of synthetic urine. Without aesthetic standards, we have no way to determine quality or inferiority.
We do. We do determine quality over inferiority. You can't. Okay. I've been the dead horse about this, but we have standards. Everyone has their own aesthetic. People might like punk rock designs. Oh, I love, these kind of like loose line work kind of paintings that have this kind of sketchy feel to it. Oh, I like stuff that has a little more realism to it. Everyone has their own aesthetics to it. Some people like cel-shaded video games. Some people like more realistic realism in video games. We do have standards. We can determine quality over inferiority. We do have that. If we didn't, then I should be fucking rich right now. But okay.
Here's a test I give my graduate students, all talented and
This is kind of funny. I laughed at this.
well-educated. Please analyze this Jackson Pollock painting.
Spoiler alert, guys. This might shock you, but this is not a Jackson Pollock. Whoa. The reason why I knew this wasn't was because it's very clear that this is just an apron. It's very obvious. Just by looking at the fabric, you can see the apron's fabric there. But the thing is that there was a study that a college did, or a university, whatever, where they had these students come in, take a piece of paint, just splattered it on a canvas, and they would allow students to come in and go as they please to do it, and then they would look at it and say, "Does this look like a Jackson Pollock?" And every time, and it did not. They did this experiment. They looked at the results, and the results were that it did not even look remotely close to it. The reason why Jackson Pollock really made a name for himself with his painting was that it looked ridiculous, and it looks kind of scattered that you just took the brush and just kind of threw paint on it. But it also looked very intent. There was an intent in the paint that hit the canvas. It was like that he splattered the paint in a very precise or intentional way to make the painting splatter the way that it did. So when I looked at this, it was very clear that there was no intent with this. You can only tell when there's intent of you splattering brush because you're intentionally moving your hand with the paintbrush to splatter the paint. Jackson Pollock did not go up and be like, oh right. Psh, psh, psh. You didn't just do that. It didn't, because it would have looked ridiculous. But his paintings looked intentional. That's why he was such a big person in the Impressionism, because he did something that was kind of playing with your mind, thinking in your mind, anyone could do this, I could do this, I could come home with a canvas, splatter paint, and then call that a Jackson Pollock. But if you take that to any other painting, to any other art historian, they're going to say this is not a Jackson Pollock. The only time that you can kind of make the argument would be if you look at the movie Who the Bleep is Jackson Pollock. That's a show about that's not a show, it's a movie about this woman who somehow found this thing that she bought at a thrift shop or a garage sale that all has paint on it, and she thought it was a Jackson Pollock, and she had all these forensics come in to look at the paint, see and compare the paint and this and that. And I think it kind of ended on with an ambiguity to it, saying like, oh, it might be, it might not be. I don't think it was. The only reason why it kind of looked like it was because it kind of had the same similar streaks on it. It's just that I kind of don't think it was. I think it kind of didn't work out, but whatever. But this is just kind of a dumb example. He would have had a better, approach if he pulled from the movie, not from his apron.
And explain why it is good. It is only after they give very eloquent answers that I inform them that the painting is actually a close-up of my studio apron. Why it is good.
Okay. Why it is good. And explain why it's good.
It is only after they give very eloquent answers that I inform them that...
Alright, these answers are supposed to be elegant. Bold, unconventional, evocative, perfectly balanced in its randomness. These are not from his fucking grad students, by the way. I've seen these fucking statements everywhere else. Perfectly balanced and in its randomness is a very standard compliment towards a Jackson Pollock, but as I said, it looks intentional. When you look at his paintings, you can kind of tell that he intently, flicked the brush on that canvas. But whatever. Okay.
The painting is actually a close-up of my studio apron.
But he's not really pertaining to that. He's just saying, why is the Jackson Pollock piece good? Whatever. It is what it is.
I don't blame them.
I don't
probably have done the same, since it's nearly impossible to differentiate between the two.
Impossible. I wouldn't say it's impossible. It's very possible. But okay.
And who will determine quality is another challenge I'm given. If we are to be intellectually honest, we all know of situations where professional expertise is acknowledged and depended upon. Take figure skating in the Olympics, where artistic excellence is judged by experts in the field. Surely we would flinch at the contestant who indiscriminately threw himself across the ice and demanded that his routine be accepted as being as worthy of value as that of the most disciplined skater.
But that's fundamentally different because figure skating is very traditional. It's very... I mean, there's an expectation with it. Art, on the other hand, has gotten so varied. I mean, people have always argued that Andy Warhol ruined art. Oh, that's where the start of this whole fall of art began. But art has grown and evolved so much that there is a measurement of quality, and who will measure it has also been have changed. Unfairly, who has pretty much measured art, or in some ways art historians, but also stockholders, investors, because investors determine what piece is going to have value over some, and that's how it's always kind of been. Like, I was in a class talking about contemporary art, and one of the things that he had a guest come over and to talk about kind of his methodology on how he buys art, donates art, all that kind of stuff. And that guy, was he an art teacher? No. Was he an artist? No. You know what he was? He was a truck driver. He was either a truck driver or he owned a company of trucks or whatever. Something like that. And he determines, pretty much, one of the people that determined what art has the most value. So why does he get to choose? Because he has the money. He has the money that a lot of institutions need. So he determines the value. And because he's the one that's buying the art and that's donating the art. But okay.
Not only has the quality of art diminished, but also the subject matter has gone from the transcendent to the trashy. Where once artists applied their talents to scenes of substance and integrity, from history, literature, religion, mythology, etc. Many of today's artists merely use their art to make statements.
But a lot of artists also use mythology, literature to also make statements. Art has always been to make a statement. And I like how he's alluding to art making statements is a negative. It's not. Art can make statements. Art is a voice. It's just mind numbing to see this guy who claims to be an artist to kind of shit on art that has always made statements. Art has always been making statements. The back in ancient Rome, the statues that they were making, they were of their own generals in godlike forms. They based their mythology around that almost. I mean, it's not 100% their mythology, but you look at some of their statues, it has to do with their generals. And so obviously it was to make a statement. Art has always been to make a statement. It's always been with art in art. This guy is just kind of annoyed that art has been so open, I guess. He just doesn't like the new generation of artists. But okay.
Often for nothing more than shock value. Artists of the past...
Yeah, shock value. Okay.
also made statements at times, but never at the expense of the visual excellence of their work.
Okay.
It's not only artists who are at fault. It is equally the fault of the so-called art community, the museum heads...
Hey, guess what? You're part of the art community, buddy.
Gallery owners and the critics who encourage and financially enable the production of this rubbish.
But whatever.
It is they who champion graffiti and call it genius.
Graffiti can be artistic. Okay, whatever.
Scatological and call it meaningful. It is they who, in reality, are the naked emperors of art. For who else would spend $10 million on a rock and think it is art? But why do we have to be victims of all this bad taste? We don't.
How are we victims? If you want to make art a certain way, make that art. Put it into the field. Do it yourself. This mentality of, well, this guy isn't making art I like, so art's doomed. Like that's kind of dumb. Because art is to a point subjective. It's very open. There is a level of quality. You could definitely tell a piece of shit from a piece of art. This argument of, well, this is shock value, so it has no value. Oh, this has no quality put into it. We're not looking into it in a meaningful way. And look at the old masters. They made statements, but it wasn't to the expense of the viewer. But at the same time, a lot of artists are also wanting to push the boundaries. What if we make something that is aesthetically pleasing, but the subject matter is disgusting and ugly? We're not going to just, dress it up to make it look nice. Sometimes, the beauty is of what the art is trying to say. There's all of these statements that are worth being put into art because it's also stuff that we might not be thinking about conventionally. This idea of this kind of linear kind of artwork that he wants to have as quality, because that's kind of what he's alluding to. He wants art to go through a linear spectrum of it being good and it has to be kind of on par with the old masters, just pushing the boundaries in that kind of way. But what if we push boundaries in other ways with art? Art has this freedom in it that you can get away with it, but at the same time is, what can you get away with? It's this kind of realm of playing with the expectations is that in of itself can be art. Again, when you look at art, it's very, 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 very vague and ambiguous, and in that ambiguity can be something beautiful and thoughtful. You can't really measure stuff in a linear fashion. Like, yeah, an art student can get an A plus in an art class, and they can make beautiful works of art, but they could go on to make other stuff that might not be, in that same kind of style. Art is always changing. There's a lot of artists that do a lot of different styles and play around with different styles. Like, technically, with his own way, he could say that Yoshi Shinkawa's art is ugly because it's not like the old masters. Oh, it's not as detailed or complete, because sometimes when you look at Yoshi Shinkawa's art, there's a lot of implied line work, and it's just random splotches of ink on a page that form something. That's fine and dandy, but it's not as beautiful as the Mona Lisa. And if you start looking at art in that kind of way, you're not going to really have this experimentation and stylized approach to arts that a lot of people tend to like. It's not as simple anymore, because as times change, things change. I mean, we have we have cameras. We don't really need art to be real, to drive for realism anymore. Not that the realistic paintings are gone, or that they just vanished. There's still a need and desire for them, and a value to them. But there's also a more value, or there's also a value and a desire to seek stuff that is more thoughtful and engaging and more like kind of funny, in the sense of, that doesn't seem like art to me, because it opens a discussion. Something that you might not think is art opens the dialogue of you starting to think, is this art, is that art? And a lot of times, a lot of these paintings kind of want you to evoke in that kind of thinking. They want you to think in that kind of term, like, because you learn about yourself. You learn what you yourself deem is art and what isn't. When I show you something that is like a white canvas, you might say to yourself, that's not art. And I can ask you, well, why do you think this is art? You say, well, I think art is something that's like this, like that, and you start to express yourself in that kind of way. And a lot of the stuff that we see with these impressionists and contemporary artists is to kind of push you into thinking that. But that doesn't mean that we're not getting beautiful works of art anymore. We still get that. This video is complete garbage because it devalues art as a whole unintentionally, because he's devaluing the provocative nature that is art. Art is a beast. It can take shape in many ways. It could be thoughtful. It could be ambiguous. It could be beautiful. It could be gorgeous. It could be something that is physically visible. It could be something that has intent behind it. All of this stuff happens in art. And to devalue it, saying, well, this is garbage, and we're allowing this garbage to happen because we're just so liberal with what we deem as art, is just kind of dumb.
By the art we patronize at museums or purchase at galleries, we can make our opinions not only known but felt. An art gallery, after all, is a business like any other. If the product doesn't sell, it won't be made. We can also support organizations like the Art Renewal Center that work to restore objective standards to the art world. And we can advocate the teaching of classical art appreciation in our schools. Let's celebrate.
But Impressionism is part of art, so we'll have to appreciate that art, and the art that's being made now that stemmed from that also has to be appreciated because it is also art. See, you could kind of use this argument back at him, saying, well, what is art? Well, art is this, yeah, but, what if art is ugly, and it is, harsh reality? What if it's all these things? If we determine that to be art, then wouldn't we also have to appreciate that too? Who's he to say what is art? That's the other thing. He spent 5 minutes telling us what is art. This is what I think art is. I think it's supposed to be, part of the old masters. He gave us his standards of art. But who is he to tell us what we think is art? Oh, because he's an artist? Well, I'm an artist too. So I guess my art is art, guys, okay? It's fact. It's a fact, guys, okay? So you guys should be buying my art because it's art. And you have to agree with that because I'm an artist, so you gotta respect my opinion. Like who is he to express that? Anyone can make an argument about what is art. But okay.
Celebrate what we know is good and ignore what we know is not.
So that's kind of a what?
The teaching of classical art appreciation
Let's
in
say
our
that again.
schools. Let's celebrate what we know is good and ignore
what we know is good. So if you think that the sculpture of that policewoman urinating, if you think that's good, hey, appreciate it. Let's celebrate that being good. If you think the Campbell soup can painting that Andy Warhol did is crap, then ignore it. There you go.
Ignore what we know is not. By the way,
funny how it's like, well, we know what's good if you disagreed with what I said for 5 minutes. This is a very manipulative video. It's very manipulative because he's tricking you to think that what he's saying is factually one-sidedly true. Like, oh yeah, this is true. Art is beautiful, art is gorgeous. We know that's the case, so you agree with me. But art can be anything. I could think a Jackson Pollock is gorgeous. I could think a Rothko is gorgeous. The intensity of the colors that he uses in his paintings. I could say that is gorgeous. It's just beautiful. I like the statement he's making. I like the intensity of it. I could say that is good and celebrate that. I could say that today's contemporary art is also good. Modern art is so wide that he's kind of ignoring quality art that's still being made. You can still find quality art being made. It's not that impressionist or modern art has kind of shifted away from quality. It's not even that. We're still producing good art. We're still producing valuable art. Just because you find something that is more, unconventional or not as, stylized as the old masters or anything like that, that doesn't mean that it's not art. It doesn't mean that all art has to have that same intention. Art can have different intentions and different directions. That's why a lot of people love art, because it has this discussion with it. It has this side to it that really makes you think. Like, you could take someone that never knew, or who doesn't have any background in art, take them to a museum, and they can tell you what they think is art just by looking at the pieces there. Art is very provocative. It's very, 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 very stimulating. Because it makes you think of what is art. It really makes you think, do I think this is art? Do I think this is art? I mean, you could make any argument with this. So let's finish the end of this, and I'm gonna propose a question to you all at the end of the video, and I'm very interested in your answers.
The white background you see behind me is not simply a white graphic backdrop. It is a pure white painting by noted artist Robert Rauschenberg at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. I'm Robert Florzak for Prager University.
But it looks kind of nice though. But alright, here's my question. Alright, I'm very curious of what the comments are going to be on this. Do you guys... So we all consider anime to be art. We consider that to be artistic and all this other kind of stuff. So if we're going to incorporate anime in art, is hentai art? Are we going to include hentai? Is hentai art? Is it not art? What makes it not art? Is it because it's pornographic? Is it because it has sexual scenes? But someone had to draw those scenes and design the characters in this hentai. So that is the question for you to decide. Is hentai art? Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.